evening, brothers and sisters, and welcome to another Shift video. Shift done in the evening when there's darkness. Because I want us to see something. I want us to see that we need to shift from wanting to see what Jesus is doing to listening and hearing his voice. Let's prove this point for a second. Well, now that's very disconcerting. You can barely see me and you definitely don't know what I'm doing, specifically if I walk even further away. But just because you can't see me and you can't see what I'm doing, you do recognize my voice. If you've been a subscriber and you listen to me often, you will recognize that this is Terrence speaking. But even if you've just seen the first bit of this video, you will recognize that it's Terrence speaking. Thereby, you don't need to see really if you want to hear the message. The message will still come across to you, whether you can see me or not. And often as Christians, specifically when the darkness descends, we say, I cannot see what Jesus is doing. Perhaps we need to hear him and not try and see him. Let's get the lights back on, shall we? Ah, that's much better. That's far more comfortable. It's easier to see someone and hear them than just hear them. However, our Master, our God, considers himself a shepherd. He often refers to himself as a shepherd, which infers, by the way, that we are sheep. And that's not a bad thing. It's actually a good thing. And Jesus says something very interesting when he refers to himself as a shepherd, specifically when we look at the Gospel of John. In John 10, verse 27, Jesus says, My sheep listen to my voice. I know them and they follow me. Why doesn't he say, my sheep recognize what I look like? Again, in John 10, he says, John 10 verse 5, he says, But they will never follow a stranger. In fact, they will run away from him because they do not recognize a stranger's voice. In verse 4, just prior to that, he had said, When he has brought out all his own, he goes on ahead of them, and his sheep follow him because they know his voice. Why speak about a voice? Why not say, but my sheep recognize me. They see me in the fields and they recognize me. They see me walking down the street and they recognize me. Because Jesus knows that when we need him most is when there's darkness. And it's at that point that you need to be able to recognize not what he looks like or what he's doing, but his voice. Because he will speak. And if he speaks, he always speaks with love, and even if that love comes with discipline, if we listen to him, we will be able to find our way in the darkness to him. And when we are with him in the darkness, he will lead us through the darkness into the light. He will take us through our moments of darkness. In Luke, he says the following, And there were shepherds living out in the fields nearby, keeping watch over their flocks at night. Jesus is the good shepherd, which means when the nighttime comes, when the darkness comes, Jesus is watching over his flock. He's watching over you. He knows it's dark, and that's why he said you need to recognize his voice. What is Jesus' voice? Yet again, his holy word. This is where Jesus gives us his voice. This is where he speaks. And when the darkness comes, you need to recognize his voice, and you will not be able to do so if you haven't become accustomed to his voice. If you stay in his word, specifically when the darkness comes, you will recognize his voice. And when you do, you will find him in the darkness. And when you find him, he will lead you through the darkness, and he will carry you. He will look after you at night. Let's shift. Try not to see what Jesus is doing, but rather listen to and recognize his voice. I love you, brothers and sisters. Until next time.